Welcome to a special edition of Our Esquina's Digging Deep, and our T Squared podcast with former Major League All-Star Russ Ortiz, sports writer Jesus Ortiz, and special guest Manuel Gomez. We have one rookie BBWA member who just finished his first season. Congratulations, Manny.
Thank you.
We have
Yay.
a veteran Major League ball player, former All-Star, former 21 game winner, 21 game winner, right?
Yep.
And a sports writer. I'm in my 16th season voting for the Hall of Fame. So I guess I've covered baseball for 26 seasons. But I started very young. So there you go. I got my first BBWA card in 1997. Got my first Hall of Fame vote in 2006 for the for the class in which Tony Gwynn and Cal Ripken Jr. were
Oh.
elected.
Wow.
I love this time of the year. I love voting for the Hall of Fame. I love spending time, and every year early on, I would have a dinner where excuse me, where we discuss my ballot with a celebrity panel of people who cared about baseball. Who I always think fans know as much about the Hall of Fame process. Some fans, as some of us voters. And I'd sit there, with Texas Supreme Court Judge David Medina, who's on the bench at the time, and some other accomplished lawyers, and we'd sit down and debate the ballot, and then they yell at me for the guys I was voting for. I still get text messages from Judge David Medina angry that I didn't vote for Rafael Palmeiro,
Oh my God.
and we're gonna hold a similar dinner here next week with a couple of friends. Judge Medina's coming, but let's discuss this ballot. I've had in one year we had former Astros manager Cecil Cooper call in and give the case for Jim Rice, and it was pretty cool. But this is so this will be the second time in which I have a major league ball player discussion on this ballot. So once again, you're listening to Digging Deep in our T Squared podcast with former Major League All-Star Russ Ortiz, Jesus Ortiz, and special guest today, Manuel Gomez. First of all, Russ, what does it mean for ball players to be on the Hall of Fame ballot, and just to when you think of the Hall of Fame, what does it mean to you? I know you've played in the Hall of Fame game. What does the Hall of Fame mean to ball players?
I mean, well, it means that, everything that you've worked for, everything you've sacrificed from, I would say for most of us, maybe not all of us, but for most of us that played, it was a dream from when you were age 5, 6, 7 years old to play in the major leagues. And so all the work and everything, that led up to that got you the opportunity to even be considered in the discussion, for the Hall of Fame. I think it's just a validation of all of that work, all of the people in your life, family, coaches, all that stuff. But I think for players, it's just really, like I said, it's validation that all the work and sacrifice that you put into it, and you saw the fruits. You're seeing the fruits of the labor, and then if you ever get votes, then I think that's just another kind of ribbon that you can kind of place on yourself, because that means that not only you or your peers think you did a great job, but then you have writers and people that this is their job, and that they're also telling you that you had a great career. And so I mean, I wouldn't say most guys go into playing Major League Baseball with their eye on the Hall of Fame, because I think you recognize just how difficult it is to achieve that. I think pretty much everybody goes in with trying to have a great career, earn a great living, and win a championship. I think that's, most guys' goal, and but it's an honor, just being able to talk to guys that I know that have been elected to Hall of Fame. They are just blown away with that honor, and to be able to be recognized as one of the greatest players to ever play the game.
Manuel, as a fan, as somebody who just a year ago was on the other side, what do you think of the voting process? And have you followed it? Did you follow it as a fan? Did you get all pissed off when people didn't vote for your favorite player? How do you see it? And now from a different side, knowing that in 9 years, you'll get a Hall of Fame ballot if you stay in this profession, stay in the BBWA. Hey.
So I did follow it as a fan, and this is also one of my favorite times of years, just because you get to have a discussion about the players of the past. And I feel like baseball does the best job of any sport in kind of keeping history relevant today. Like, it's all about stats. We all know how many home runs Babe Ruth has. We all know who has a strikeout record. We remember Russ's, start in the postseason when he got pulled out by, I don't want to bring that memory back up, but we constantly live in the past. And that's one of the great things about baseball. I've always been frustrated from the other side. When I see guys, I feel like if someone's a Hall of Famer, and this is just my opinion, Jesus, you might shut me down here as a veteran. I feel like if someone's a Hall of Famer, they're a Hall of Famer. Why do we wait till second ballot or third ballot? If you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. You're either in or you're out. And I never liked when it's held as some sort of punishment or against the player because maybe they weren't friendly with the media, or I feel like either you're in or you're out. So that was my biggest frustration. Now looking at it from this side, I see what the responsibility is. I'm many years away from getting a vote. I see what the responsibility is. I sat here and I filled out the ballot as if I had a vote before, and I really struggled. So I see where you're coming from in that sense. Still, I went through the process thinking, who would I vote? Who do I know that I'm going to vote for, and I'm not going to change my mind in the future? Meaning, whoever I didn't check off on my list, I don't believe in my heart of hearts that I would ever vote for these guys.
Oh wow,
so I don't know if that answers your question.
That's interesting, because I've voted for guys years after not voting for them, and especially in the last decade, because of the steroid era, we've had crowded ballots. We've had 10 guys plus who've been worthy of votes, but because the ballot was crowded, because of the steroid era, meaning guys like Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds have stayed longer, so they've clogged the ballot. Mike Piazza, a lot of guys who should have been in, they didn't get votes because there were 13 guys in. And if you look at the 2015 class, we voted in Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, John Smoltz, Craig Biggio. Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, and John Smoltz were first ballot guys. Craig Biggio was a third ballot guy, and I would argue he should have been a first ballot guy. Mike Piazza didn't get in that year. That was his third year on the ballot. Jeff Bagwell didn't get in that year. That was his fifth year on the ballot. Tim Raines, he didn't get in that year. He was eighth. That was his eighth year on the ballot. Lee Smith, that was his 13th year on the ballot. He didn't get in. He was voted in by the Veterans Committee. Edgar Martinez, that was his 6th year on the ballot, and he was only at 27% of the vote. And then Alan Trammell, he got voted in. That's his 14th year on the ballot. No, he didn't get voted in by the BBWA, if I remember correctly. Mike Mussina, that was his 2nd year on the ballot. And that poor guy got 24.6% of the ballot votes. And I would argue that if the ballot hadn't been clogged, and I'll tell you who was on the ballot that year: Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, John Smoltz, Craig Biggio, Mike Piazza, Jeff Bagwell, Tim Raines, Curt Schilling, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Lee Smith, Edgar Martinez, Alan Trammell, Mike Mussina, Jeff Kent. Larry Walker was on his 5th year on the ballot, had 11.8% of the votes. Think about that. How crazy is that? In his 5th year, he only had 11.8, and he ended up getting 75 points. You have to get 75% of the ballot, and it can't be 74.9. It can't be 74.8, as we learned in 2014 with poor Craig Biggio. Excuse me, who was literally 2 votes shy of induction into the Hall of Fame, election into the Hall of Fame. So let's move forward to this year's ballot. And move, and then the next year you get Ken Griffey Jr. He gets in automatically, and then you have in 2018 you have another group that's pretty stout, with Jeff Bagwell gets in on the 7th time, Tim Raines 10th time, Ivan Rodriguez, shocking, gets in first ballot 76%. Shocking more because the ballot was clogged, and also because there was that cloud over him that had kept some of the guys off. And Larry Walker was still stuck at 21.9% of the ballot, and he ended up making it in the Hall of Fame. And then now we go to 2019, and then you see Chipper Jones, first ballot, easy, 97.2%. Vladimir Guerrero, 2nd ballot. And Jim Thome, first ballot Hall of Famer. Trevor Hoffman, third time on that's 4 great Hall of Famers right there. And then if you see other Hall of Famers, then you see Edgar Martinez suddenly on the 9th year climbed to 70.4. So he could see the Hall of Fame from there. Larry Walker was still stuck at 34.1. Think about that. And then you start moving closer. And then in 2019, the first historic Mariana Rivera, the only guy to get 100% of the vote. Not Babe Ruth, not Sandy Koufax. Nobody had ever gotten 100% of the vote. Nobody has since. So you have both extremes. You have Mariano Rivera, first ballot Hall of Famer, 100% of the vote. Edgar Martinez, 10th ballot, last chance, 85.4%. Roy Halladay, first ballot, 85.4%. Mike Mussina finally makes it, 6th year on the ballot, 76.7%. And you wonder, why did it take Mike Mussina so long? Oh, Larry Walker, he was still stuck at 54.6%. And I then you look at the next year, and then we had some drama again. Derek Jeter gets in on 99.7% of the votes. Somebody decided that Derek Jeter wasn't worthy. And who cares? If you get in, you get in. But still, it would have been nice for him to get 100%. And then Larry Walker gets in finally on his 10th try, 76.6%. I voted for him. So there you go. So I look at guys, and I remember the first time Billy Wagner was on the ballot. I told him, I said, just get past the threshold. You will continue to trend upwards, because I think he's a Hall of Famer. And then last year, we didn't vote anybody in. Nothing. In this year's class, there was no new person voted in by the Baseball Writers Association of America. Curt Schilling, 71.1%. Barry Bonds, 61.8%. Roger Clemens, 61.6%. And then Billy Wagner climbs up to 46.4 in his sixth year. So you could see the trajectory. So the question to you, Russ, what do you do if you were in my position? And I'll give you my position and how I've viewed it. I think, although I believe in my heart 100% that you did it clean, I know there were guys that I believed were clean, turns out weren't clean. Andy Pettit being one of them. And I was so naive that I believe because he portrayed this very Christian, honest, guy, that he wouldn't lie. And he lied to my face at the end of the, I think, 2007 season when we flat out asked him. Allison Footer and I flat out asked Roger Clemens and Andy Pettit about the Grimsley affidavit that the LA Times had written about. Turns out the LA Times was wrong, and they had to put a correction because they named Clemens and Andy Pettit in that affidavit. And as part of those questions, I flat out asked, did you ever take performance enhancing drugs? And Andy Pettit said no. And that's what I wish fans would understand when they say, oh, how did you not know that these guys were, why didn't you ask this question? Well, we didn't have subpoena power.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who the heck was on steroids, who wasn't. So therefore, I just try to vote based on what I saw on the field, the stats, with a little bit of a, and I don't sound like a hypocrite because I don't think, and I haven't decided, and I won't decide till next week before my dinner. What I'll do is, Mr. What I do is I'll turn in my ballot. I'll send a copy to the one of the greatest guys who tracks all this, and then I'll have a dinner, and then we'll debate it all over again with Judge Medina. But I'm almost 100% certain that I'm not going to vote for Alex Rodriguez. So what the hell am I talking about? So at one point I say that I look at what's on the field, and then you get Alex Rodriguez and David Ortiz, and I wrote this last week, they usher in a new performance enhancing era on the Hall of Fame ballot, just as we're about to end the first steroid era. So I'll ask you, Russ, would you vote for Barry Bonds, your former teammate? Would you vote for Alex Rodriguez? And do you see a difference between the two as I do?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it's tough because as a former player, I get to play 12 seasons, and I tell everybody, for me, it was just, steak and coffee was pretty much my, the thing that got me going. And so, well, I've played against a lot of these guys. But as far as this discussion, the Hall of Fame discussion, the two guys that on the ballot that I got to see every single day, Barry Bonds, or three guys, Jeff Kent and Andrew Jones. I played with Vasquel 1 year, but the guys that I really got to see, play, and it's hard for me because when I think about Barry, I'm like, I look at his career up until everybody has seen the documentaries and stuff like that. Up until the spring training, he came in and he was just, bigger, and all that. Well, he had a Hall of Fame career up until that point already. So that's one of the things that I would say I always take into consideration when it comes to someone like him, is that if I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think that year that he came into spring training where he was noticeably bigger, I think that's the year that everybody is like, okay, from that point on to the rest of his career, he took steroids and he cheated. So I'm like, okay, well.
So what year was that? So you're talking about 99? Are we talking about 99? Are we talking about 2000? What year are we talking about? And that's what I don't understand.
I'm trying to remember if it was, I want to say it was 2000.
2000 was a 73 home run season. Before that was a 49 home run season, which to that point was the most he had hit in his career.
Yeah.
In a single
so
season.
I want to say it was spring training 2000 where
2001 was the 73 home run season. He hit 49 in 2000.
In 2000.
I remember that one vividly because we covered, he hit his 70th here in Houston.
Right. A lot far. It was far. It was really far.
Yeah. And down the middle too.
So, well, whatever that year is,
the home run.
Like all that stuff. Like I didn't like pay attention, like until someone kind of pointed it out. I didn't, whether it's 2000, 2001, when Barry came into spring training, it's like, I didn't even notice. I'm just concentrating on doing my thing to make sure that I'm getting ready and all that stuff. And until someone pointed out, I was like, I took a step back. I was like, well, yeah, he's, his neck's bigger and stuff. But I mean, he was, to me, he was in really good shape already. So, but like I said, so whatever that year is, 2000, 2001, because I think, again, Jesus, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody looks at, well, one of those years is when he started. So everybody's concentrating on those years. So like I said, my thing is from the time he got to the big leagues until that time where everybody's saying this is when he started taking it, I think you can argue that he already had a Hall of Fame career, based off of the numbers and all that stuff. And so that's where it's hard for me, because I'm like, I saw him play on TV and all that stuff. I got to play with him, for, like we're talking about, for those couple years before, he was working with Balco and stuff like that. So I got to see what he can do. So him taking steroids, to me, kept him on the field. It didn't make him a better player. He hit just as well as he did that, seeing him before. So, but I think it kept him on the field so he can break the record, so he can be out there and do his thing.
Let me argue with you here, okay? And I'm gonna argue with here.
You don't have to
facts.
argue with me. I mean, you could
disagree. No. So in 98 he played 156 games. In 97 he played 159. In 96 he played 158. In 99 he played 102. In 2000 he played 143. In 2001 he played 153. In 2002 143. In 2003 130. In 2004, 147. So he actually played in 2005, 14. In 2006, 130. 2007, 126. So theoretically, he actually played fewer games while he was supposedly on the juice than he did.
Well, when I say kept him on the field, I mean, again, he had bad knees. He had, just other things that as players do, that they deal with. And I think that's more of what I'm talking about is that's maybe something that kept him on the field to play the 140 games or whatever. And we all know that, the 140, let's just say he played 145 games one year. Well, not some of those were just, he came in to pinch hit, wasn't necessarily like he may have played the whole game, or anything, or he may have just played part of the game or whatever. But, and that's what I'm talking about, is that if maybe, if he didn't take, what he was taking, it would have been more of 90 games, maybe 100 games. And so those extra, 40 games, let's say, on average, it sounds like that's about what it was, about on average, about 140 games. Those extra 40 games, I mean, think about, because of the great hitter that he was, that's a lot of home runs, or a lot of opportunities for home runs. And so that's more of what I'm talking about. I'm not saying, it kept
okay.
him playing, full,
No, I hear you. I hear you. Let me put you on the spot here again. So you're a yes on Barry Bonds. I've been a yes on Barry Bonds every year except for
I would
one.
say I'm a yes. But that, I think I'm just like you, but I would say I'm probably a no on other guys, on other guys. But
let's discuss this a little bit further.
That's why it's such a great discussion, because it's, and you mentioned the word, hypocrite before. It's like, I don't think, any of you writers or anybody, or myself or Manuel, if we say, well, this guy should go in, but that guy, that's being hypocritical. It's like, it's I don't think it's being hypocritical, because of, like I said, for me with Barry, before all the steroid talk, came about, I was like, he was already a Hall of Famer.
And I didn't realize he had already played 15 years before he got to 2001. So yeah. So in many ways, there's something to say. You're listening to Digging Deep, an Ortiz Squared podcast with former Major League All-Star Russ Ortiz, sports writer Jesus Ortiz, and special guest Manuel Gomez, the Our Esquina podcast director and East Coast bureau chief. So Manuel,
yes,
what is your thinking on the steroid era guys? What do you think of what Russ said about Barry Bonds? And if you had a ballot, would you vote for Barry Bonds? And just if you could just touch that a little bit, and then we're gonna jump into David Ortiz.
So the first thing that popped into my mind when I was hearing Russ talk about, when we were all having the discussion about pre and post 1999 or 2000, when did he start using it? I think that's the big problem with the steroid or performance enhancing dilemma, is there's no way of knowing when someone started. He may have been doing this his entire career for all we know. We have no idea. I've said before, no one is beyond suspicion. Everyone thinks that Derek Jeter is this sparkly clean player, and I'm not implicating Jeter at all, but what I've told people before is I wouldn't be surprised, because we just don't know. There's no way of knowing. I mean, Alex Rodriguez was found to have tested positive on that anonymous test, admitted it in 2009, and then was involved in the biogenesis scandal and never tested positive for performance enhancing drugs, never in his entire career. So I have to look at Barry Bonds' career, since he never tested positive, as if he did it clean. Now, I know that the evidence is overwhelming that he did something, just based on how he came into that spring training alone.
Well,
is enough evidence.
But also keep in mind, like he testified that he used the cream. So
right,
like,
but yeah, that's the thing. But he also testified that he was using that, but it wasn't for him. Whether you believe him or not, I think that's irrelevant. But that the cream and the clear, that he had no idea that it was steroids, and then it was something to disguise it being steroids. So I think, man, well, is that what you're saying? You're just like, well, because I've had that thought too. Well, I don't think it's ever been known that he's tested positive. So then the first kind of question or statement is just like, well, I don't believe him. It's like, well, that's irrelevant. I would say that's kind of irrelevant here. It's like, if he hasn't tested positive And he said that he didn't know. You either take him at his word or you don't. And if you don't believe him, well, that to me is where you're just like, well, then now you're just throwing stones, at people, and then it goes back to all. Then that writer that does that, they must be squeaky clean. They must have never done anything wrong, in their life. And so I think that just kind of starts other discussions. And Manuel, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
also,
yeah.
And also so prior to me joining Our Esquina, I had a podcast called Welcome to the Show. And I used to interview people randomly. And one person I interviewed was an FBI agent. His name escapes me, but he was in charge of Operation Equine. How do you say Equine? I think Equine. I'm not sure how you say it. And they named it Operation Equine because it involved steroids, and how some players, not just in baseball, all across professional sports, were using steroids that were intended for horses. And two of the players that were found to have used it were Jose Canseco and Mark Maguire. I think it was 1988. And this FBI agent, after investigating, came to Major League Baseball, I think it was 1994, and informed them that this was a problem in Major League Baseball. Nothing happened after that. Nobody. I mean, there was memos faxed by was it Faye? Who was the commissioner before Selig? Was it Faye? Not Faye Vincent. That was the MLBPA. I can't remember. But anyway,
Faye Vincent was commissioner.
Oh, he was commissioner before Selig, right?
He was definitely commissioner before Selig.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out.
So there were memos sent out, and there were memos sent out, and things telling players basically don't use it, but we're not going to punish you if you do, essentially. So you're kind of enabling it in a way. As soon as we come back from the strike, you're seeing Sammy Sosa, Mark Maguire hitting 60 home runs a season for 3 consecutive years. I think Sosa did it. And I'm rambling on here, but the point that I'm trying to make is I can't hold Barry Bonds to a different standard than I hold, say, Ivan Rodriguez, because Ivan Rodriguez was also implicated, never tested positive, but was voted in the first ballot. So if he can get in, why can't Barry Bonds? We're just talking about implications. Right. Never tested positive again. He could claim plausible deniability all he wants, and we have to take him for his word because we have no idea. Bonds could say, I rubbed that cream on, but I had no idea that it was helping me hit, 500-foot homers. You know what I'm saying?
Let me just touch a couple of things. So I want to push back a little bit on Russ and push back a little bit on you. Mm-hmm. The squeaky clean, that has nothing to do with it, Russ, because we have this ballot. We're entrusted with it. It doesn't say you could only vote for it if you've been 100% squeaky clean. It says you've covered Major League Baseball for 10 consecutive years with the BBWA at least. And that's how you get the ballot. It doesn't say you could only get this ballot if you've been squeaky clean in your life. And I'm just
talking about that character clause,
but the character clause, that's different. We haven't discussed the character clause.
But that's what I mean when I talk about
being okay. So you're talking about okay. So the character, yeah, no, I hear you, and that'll probably go more into discussion with Curt Schilling, right? But also, Manuel, because we don't have 100% proof doesn't mean we ignore what we've seen from our eyes and what we think, and in many ways, I've sidestepped that because I don't want to pretend that and I discussed it with my daughter and my wife, and my wife's heard this many times. I've been at parties. I was at a Christmas party the first year that I voted for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, and the host, Cynthia's her name, says, Jesus, I have to warn you, my dad read your column in the Chronicle, Houston Chronicle, and he's pretty upset. So he's probably going to confront you about voting for those guys and for you voting for cheaters. And I'm thinking, haha. And she says, no, I'm serious. So the way I've decided this is, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know who was on steroids. I don't know who wasn't. I know a few guys who've been implicated, but I like to think that I'm smart enough to know that the guys implicated in the Mitchell report weren't the only guys doing it.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm not gonna. And Russ, you've been in the game before. I guarantee you, in a private setting, and you said, okay, here are the Hall of Famers. How many of those guys did you suspect, or did other ball players say, this Hall of Famer was on steroids, that Hall of Famer was on steroids? We voted in many guys that we all heard were on steroids.
Right.
So I think it's unfair that Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa carry the badge, or the scarlet letter, not a badge, the scarlet letter, while other guys, fans, have naively believed were clean.
Right.
So therefore, I just wrote on
and
the
two,
stats.
we have to remember, I think it's very well known that, when you're talking about just drugs in general, but the era that I played in, because I mean, I pretty much my whole career was with, androstenedione, HGH, and steroids. I mean, pretty much the majority of my career was all through that. So, but also you have to remember there, guys took greenies. And so
I never understood. I'm going to interrupt you here, and I'm interrupting a lot, so I apologize. I never understood why guys had coffee at 4:30 in the afternoon all the time,
and then drank milk after the game.
Yeah, I never understood it. And turns out they were taking their greenies.
Right.
And what does the coffee do? It kind of like whatever, but the greenies was in there.
Well, I don't know. I think guys used it as a way to maybe hide it, because if you're drinking coffee, caffeine, you want to, kind of pep yourself up or whatever with some caffeine and all that. Because if you are throwing something, or whether anybody saw it or not, doesn't matter. But if it's, let's just say, in water, well, that just looks more suspicious, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, but I don't think the coffee combination had anything to do with it. But yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying is, like, I guarantee you, in the last, well, we'll say from 1998, when I started in the big leagues, from 1998 on, whoever's been up until they banned greenies, whoever's been voted in, as I would say, and I know my opinion is, and I may be wrong, but I would say 100% of those guys took greenies.
Did you ever take greenies?
No, never tried. I was too scared to try it, because I didn't know what it was. I mean, I know they showed up in the clubhouse and guys put them, in their coffee or whatever. And they talked about how it, just like gave them a lot of energy. But then there was guys that were just like drinking milk in the middle of the games because their heart was beating too fast. So I was like, I'm not trying that,
oh my goodness.
But me being a starter, it's, I mean, I'm pitching every fifth day. And so my adrenaline and energy, I mean, you sit for 4 days and then you're on. I mean, there was no need for me to, I mean, I had so much adrenaline going. So but the guys, it was mainly the everyday players, the guys that are playing day in and day out. I mean, that's hard. That's hard to do. I don't think people realize how hard that is, to do, to play every single day, different time zones, etc. So I was always impressed with guys that played, the whole game, 162 games or close to that. I mean, look, I played with Miguel Tejada for half a season, and I believe he's the latest guy, right, with the most games played in a row. And I'm like, incredible. Now, did it, so someone like him, did he take greenies? I never saw him, but I mean, you can speculate, but because that's hard to be that upbeat and that, have that adrenaline every single night. And so that, I say all that to say, there's plenty of guys, I think, in the Hall of Fame that have taken greenies, that can be considered a performance enhancing, supplement. And so then that it's like, well, then how can you vote guys in that most likely did that? And I'm sure there's writers that saw guys put stuff in their coffee and all that, because I've been in clubhouses where it wasn't hidden at all. So I know that there's writers that saw that stuff. So that to me is like, okay, well, if we can just say there's guys in the Hall of Fame, when you're talking about performance enhancing or even the character clause, that there's guys in the Hall of Fame that have already been voted in, that people that know these guys know that their public image is different from who they really are.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%.
So that's the part, and I think writers know exactly who those guys are as well, but because of their public image, they're voting these guys in because they're not going to get any flack for it compared to, like, say, like a Barry Bonds. I mean, it's well known a lot of writers didn't like him, for various reasons, whether he was not nice to them or didn't give them the time of day or whatever it was, and I tell people, look, I was with him in a clubhouse for 6 years. I never saw him say or do anything in the clubhouse to any writers. Did he say, I don't want to talk right now? Yeah, sure. I've done that. I did that a couple times. Did he give short answers? Did he not, did he kind of push back on some guys? Sure. But who hasn't, as a player? So at the end, when I hear, writers talk about the kind of person that he was, because he was great to me. And so I'm like, well, your experience with him is different than my experience with him. So, I just didn't see in the 6 years that I got to play with him, I didn't see what the writers are talking about. And so that's all I can go off of.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So,
and you and I
know that there's
you and I need
writers
to get
that-
on another part.
Yeah.
You and I need to get on another podcast and discuss this and hash this out. Cause I don't buy I 100% do not buy the, writers hold they're not voting for Barry Bonds because they hated him. I don't buy it. And there are guys who I've voted for who we may have exchanged curse words. We may have dropped an F-bomb on each other. Me and afterwards, I never initiated the F-bomb discussion.
Yeah, sure.
But
sure.
No, I promise you I haven't. You know me. You know how I am. But so I disagree on that, but we'll discuss it another day.
Yeah. Well, I just real quick, I'm not saying that that's the only reason. I'm saying I think it starts off that way. Yeah, I think it starts off, well, I don't like him, and then now the steroid thing for sure, done. I'm not voting for him,
Curt Schilling, I voted for him the last 2 years. I felt dirty because I don't think he passes the character test. This year he made it pretty easy in that he asked the Hall of Fame to be removed from the ballot. So I'm going to grant his wish and pretend he's not on the ballot. So he's not getting my vote. this year. I've that's the only vote that that I can promise you. Well, that and Billy Wagner. I'm voting for Billy Wagner. So I if you look at my voting history, I voted for Lee Smith, Trevor Hoffman. I've been I've been big on closers getting the respect they deserve in the Hall of Fame. But A-Rod is one that I'm still weighing, and I'm 90% leaning to not vote for Alex Rodriguez. He was suspended from baseball. He sued his own players association. So I just think that he was a cheater beyond redemption in many ways, in that he knew he was cheating. He knew he cheated. And then he sued his own association. He sued his own brothers in the Baseball Players Association.
And his team. I think he sued the Yankees too.
Yeah. He's, suing the Yankees. You think, he's suing Hank Steinbrenner, or how, whatever. But he's suing your own union because they're not defending you while you know damn well that you did this.
Right.
I don't think I could. I don't think I could get over that, because, in the same way, it's one thing to know that you did it and defend your name. It's another thing to defend your name and sue other people because they're not defending you when you know you're dirty. And that to me, that the character clause, the numbers, are his numbers real? We don't know when A-Rod started taking. Was A-Rod ever clean? I don't know that he was.
I think he admitted that he took it fairly quickly in his career, and so that's what, like, if I had a vote, for me, I'm like, anybody that came out and said, yes, I took this, I took that, and like you're saying that, they knowingly took that they said, yes, I confirm that. To me, that would disqualify them for me. If they're telling people, yes, I did do it. And also if if players tested positive, like Manny Ramirez, he got caught multiple times,
and ran away when he got caught.
Yeah, with different things. And so those are, to me, those are the easy ones where,
easy Manny, no. Easy A-Rod, no. Easy no's for you.
Yeah, to me, though, those are easy no's. And everything else, if there's not documented, positive tests, and or statement that, yes, I did take this or take that, then that's where it gets hard for me, because, like and I can't remember if Sosa, ever tested positive or admitted to
Sosa
taking.
never tested positive, and he's never admitted to it. He's quietly kind of abstained.
Right. So he's one to where I'm just like, gosh, man,
you had the cork bat.
That's where,
cork bat's not that big of a deal for me.
You still got to hit the ball. You still got to square up the ball. That's really hard to do. But
yeah, I guess what I mean by that is, does it? This is reaching here, so get ready. But does it show that he is a person who is willing to cheat? I mean, you know what I mean?
But there's different types of cheating. Like cork bat. Here's the type of cheating that I'll allow and not hold against the guy. Cork bat, sticky substances. Everybody assumes, and even sign stealing.
I'm okay
like
with
the Astros, what the Astros did, what the Red Sox did, what the Yankees did. I guarantee you, they weren't the only 3 teams among the 30 doing it. So I those, it's one of those fall under, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Those I'm okay with.
Right. I mean, because when Altuve and Correa, hopefully they play long enough to where they get consideration. That's going to be part of the discussion, right? I mean, people are going to say, well, they were part of that Astros team that got caught, and stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's going to be part of the discussion. But I think, I don't want to get too far into this, but I think you can make the argument. It's like, well, you're talking about 1 year, maybe, or not every single game and all that. So I think you can make an argument, but I think it's realistic to say when their name comes up, if they have the Hall of Fame numbers, that's going to be part of the deal. And I think that's going to be part of the character, clause, for them. Unfortunately, and I've always been, look, man, whether you took greenies, steroids, HGH, whatever it is, being a pitcher, getting major league hitters out well enough to be considered for the Hall of Fame, and being able to play pretty much every day and put it up the numbers, Hall of Fame numbers. I'm like, that's really hard to do, even if you're taking substances. Now, I'm not saying that excuses anybody. I'm just saying that people have to realize, just because you took performance enhancing substance doesn't make you a better player. It doesn't. It does not.
Well, let me just stop you there, because we're running out of time, and I don't know enough to disagree with you, and I would defer to the guy who actually stepped on the mound and competed against these guys. And I say, if Russ Ortiz is cool with it, who am I to not be cool with it? Because you competed, it was your livelihood, their livelihood, you're all making it. So if you say it, I'll believe it. But I'm gonna put you guys on the spot now. And this is part of the reason I always have my dinner, and
maybe
because I want fans to realize just how difficult.
We'll get invited to the dinner.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey man, you're welcome. It's next week. Get on a flight, bro. You're both invited. I want people to see how difficult this is, how difficult it is to get a consensus of 75% among your group. And what I tell my group is, say, all right, everybody do your votes, and then see how difficult it is for your favorite player to get 75%. Who has the ballot at their, and I want you both, if you can, to first, let's go with Manny first. Okay. Who are your 10? And then I'm going to act like the fan on Twitter and ask you why you hate this favorite team, hate this person. So Manny, who are your 10 this year?
Okay, so my 10 would be, don't laugh, I have it right here. All my 10 would be, I'm going to go in order: Bobby Abreu, Barry Bonds, Mark Burley, Roger Clemens, Todd Helton, Andrew Jones, David Ortiz, Andy Pettit, Gary Sheffield, and Billy Wagner.
Wow.
Those are my 10.
So who are the big guys that you've can you put the ballot on the screen so I could see who you're missing? I don't have it in front of me.
I think
I do actually. I'll look at. Okay, so no on Sosa.
No.
How do you go Pettit but no Sosa? And so you said Clemens, right?
I did say Clemens, yeah.
All right. Pettit, David Ortiz, no Jeff Kent.
No, it's
travesty.
I'm sorry, guys, but
why do you hate the Giants, bro?
I don't hate the Giants. I voted in Barry Bonds. I'll take that.
All right.
Hot
All
shot.
right. So Russ, now that we know that Manny hates the Giants, Because this is the kind of stuff you'll hear on Twitter the
Yeah.
first time you post your real ballot in 10 years.
I even flirted with Tim Hudson. Didn't he pitch for the Giants for a while? Or
Yeah.
no? I know the Braves for sure.
Yeah,
And I know
no, I'm
yeah.
just being facetious because this is how insane it gets with fans, where you'll vote for a guy from the Giants, they'll still accuse you of hating the Giants because you
Yeah,
did him for. So Russ, how would your 10 go?
I can see how hard it is to just. I mean, if you have to mark 10 guys on your ballot, I mean, or do you have to? Do you have to?
You
mark
don't
10
have
guys?
to mark 10
Okay.
guys. You can mark up
Because
to
I don't
10
have
guys.
10 guys.
You don't have 10 guys?
No.
Cool. That's good. That's
No.
okay. A lot of people don't. You don't have to. You can only vote up to 10 guys. But tell me, who would Russ Ortiz vote for?
So I have Barry, Clemens, Todd Helton, Jeff Kent. I'm maybe 60-40 on Joe Nathan, David Ortiz, Gary Sheffield, Billy Wagner.
Wow.
But I do have and I think like Jesus, I was telling you, Todd Helton is a great player. I do take into consideration the whole, Colorado, playing in Colorado and stuff like that. And but I know how good he was because I had to face him. And so I lean towards, saying a yes to him. And then with Joe Nathan, I mean, looking at, I mean, he's right behind Billy Wagner, and so I was like, man, that's, I had it up here, Billy has 422 and Joe had, 377.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, and being ranked eighth, all time, I'm like, that's pretty darn good. Now I also, my votes, also knowing that someone like Joe Nathan probably won't get in. And even, I don't know how people feel about Todd Helton, but I can see how for you all that do vote, like how,
It's difficult,
how
isn't it?
It's difficult, but how you could have other people like, what are you talking about? How do you vote for that guy? Are you kidding me? Or how do you not vote for that guy? And so I didn't say Schilling because I think I'm a lot harder on pitchers, especially starting pitchers, and I look at his record and I'm like, it's really hard for me to vote in a guy that has just over 200 wins. I mean, I know that there was the years that, he was dominant, stuff like that, but I'm like, okay, that doesn't mean you're a Hall of Famer, because you had, part of your career that you were dominant. So, so I'm a little harsher, on I'd say starting pitchers than other people. Same thing like with,
and I'm assuming you don't care, like, yeah, and that's a good point. I think
I just say same thing with Andy Pettit. I'm just like, he had a great career. I don't know, I wouldn't consider a Hall of Fame career. Same thing with Tim Hudson. I mean, these guys were phenomenal pitchers. But I think I just have a little, just for starting pitchers, I have a more expectation, for those guys, and not taking anything away from them by any means, But as far as like Schilling and stuff like that, I mean, stuff that he says sometimes and all that, I'm like, that's why, Jesus, you and I have had this discussion about the character clause, and I'm just like, look, man, I've played with a lot of guys that their public image is great, and they're not all what you think they are, and so, or what the public would think they are. So so to me, I understand the character clause, but at the same time, I'm like, look, if you've put up Hall of Fame stats, and you know, say some crazy things or even offensive things, you know, I would say, not that, and by no means am I saying that's okay. By no means did I say taking performance enhancing stuff is okay. I'm just saying that, you know, when you put up the stats on the field for a long time, to me that outweighs, you know, everything. And you know,
and I'm gonna stop you there, because I'm gonna appeal to the Russ Ortiz I know, and I know it doesn't overrule anything, because we haven't even discussed the spousal abuse. You know, like Omar Vasquel. How do we consider that? Neither one of you guys voted for him, so
I flirted with Vasquel because Ozzie Smith is in, and Vasquel has better numbers than Ozzie Smith offensively and defensively. I think Vasquel is considered the best defensive shortstop of that generation. So I wanted to vote for him, but the spousal stuff that just came out recently, he has a really terrible history of domestic abuse.
allegations.
Kind of turned me off. I don't know if I could stomach that personally.
Yeah, and that I'm the same way with that one. I think with, and then somebody brought up the fact that Barry Bonds had a similar issue like 20 years ago. So where do we go with that? So does Marcelo Osuna, you know, can you ever forget that whenever he's on the ballot? Omar Vasquel, the stories that came out last year, it's going to cost them my vote. I voted for him last year before the allegations came in, because I don't release my ballot as soon as I do it. So by the time I released it and sent it in, between the time that I voted, whatever, and last year actually I did it live actually. So last year I did it live and before the allegations, but you can't unsee that. You cannot take that out of your mind. And I know that so I know I know what Russ Ortiz is about, and I think that, you know, there are some character issues that you'd say, nah, I'm just not getting over that one.
Yeah, and everybody's, you know, opinion of what's right and what's wrong, you know, what's offensive, what's not offensive, you know, everybody's a little different, you know, based off of just the way they do life or the, you know, their background or whatever. And so just from you know, reading actual quotes from baseball writers or hearing their actual words, you know, on some interview or whatever, you know, just and this is just my opinion, I think that there's a lot of writers that look at players and put them under a microscope, which they should, but I think some of them are concentrating on certain things because it just doesn't line up with the way that they do things. And that's why I say, you know, if you look at the stats, you know, like you were saying, Manny, I mean, if you're a Hall of Famer, why aren't you voted in the first ballot? I mean, if everybody knows, you know, like a Ken Griffey Jr., why wasn't he 100%?
Right.
You know,
yeah.
To me, that's the part where that's where I would get on the writers and say, why isn't he 100%? Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, that's a no doubter. So I've heard from writers that say, well, I knew everybody else would vote him, he'll be fine. It's like, no, wait, listen, there are certain guys, and I think Ken Griffey is one of them. Certain guys, you're just like, look, he's definite. He's going to be marked down on every ballot, 100% of the ballots. Now we move on to the next 9 guys. I don't understand why it's not like that. I mean,
let me explain a little bit.
That's something I didn't understand when he came up, when Ken Griffey came up on the ballot.
Let me explain a little bit of the rationale there, in that when he came on, when Chipper Jones came on, the ballots were clogged. So when you deny a ballot from Ken Griffey Jr. to give it to a guy so that he could stay on the ballot, you're not hurting Ken Griffey Jr., but you're helping another guy. Chipper Jones, I use the character clause on Chipper Jones for his tweets about putting gators on the border and just whatever. But I did it in part to make a point about, when we consider character, what does character mean? I wrote a column in St. Louis about, like, what does character mean? Mm-hmm. But also, I knew that I wasn't going to deny him his rightful place in the Hall of Fame. I knew that my vote wasn't needed for him to cruise to the Hall of Fame. Curt Schilling, a couple years ago, I didn't want my vote to be the one that kept him off the Hall of Fame if he was going to get voted in. And I thought he was worthy of the vote, which I did. But I find him to be a very despicable human being. And I'm like, well, there are other despicable human beings. But then last year I thought, man, you know what? I'm going to rationalize this, and the hell with it. I'm not going to vote for him. And then when I got to it, I voted for him because I'm like, I don't want to be that vote. But then this year, he gave us an easy out. He didn't want to be on the ballot. I don't have to worry about him not getting in because he missed my vote. He didn't want to be on the ballot. The Hall of Fame put him on the ballot. I'm going to grant him his wish and not vote. And then I feel comfortable and kind of like let the Veterans Committee decide in 5 years. But I also, I appreciate you guys coming on here so we could help explain just how difficult it is, because Manny, first year BBWA member, Russ, an all-star, 12-year major league player, one of the most respected guys in his own clubhouse in Major League Baseball, and me as a 16-year Hall of Fame voter, our ballots could not be more different. Mm-hmm. So just if you consider just how difficult it is to get 3 guys to agree, we couldn't get 75%. Like the guys that would get on here that are Hall of Fame. So mine last year, this is last year's, not this year's, Bobby Abreu. Okay. He would have gotten 66% because you voted for him, right, Manny?
I would, yeah. I have him on mine. Yeah.
So he would have got 66% no go for Bobby. Barry Bonds would have gotten in. Mm-hmm. I think you're the only guy on crack voting for Mark Burley, so he's not getting in.
But can I explain that really quick?
No, too late.
No. Let me explain. I have to be able to explain. So I think that the standard we're holding starting pitchers to in this day and age, the way the game is played now, is so unrealistic. No starting pitcher will ever get in if we continue to hold them to that 300 win standard, the 3,000 strikeout standard. It's never going to happen because it's just not the way of the game anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he
So-
pitched in an era where it was the game. You can't judge, in my opinion, and we're debating here, so you can't judge Mark Burley by the 2020 standards. That dude pitched in 2005, 2010, 2015. The game didn't change dramatically like it has until about 4 years ago, after he had
True.
already retired. So you're trying to judge Mark Burley based on him pitching for the Tampa Bay Rays and going to pitch 3 innings and get relieved in the playoffs, and everybody be like, "Hey, no big deal."
No, but I think it started around then when we started bringing in relievers in the 6th and 7th inning, and Mark Burley was one of those durable guys. He pitched 200 plus innings every year, I think, except for one. His numbers are similar. I'm not gonna say he's Roy Halladay, but he's close to Roy Halladay. He's closer to
I'll tell you what.
Mark Burley gets in my book.
My point is that
No,
he
was
would get 33% on this short panel, so he's not getting in. Roger
Okay.
Clemens would cruise in
for me.
because he's gotten my vote in the past. Todd Helton,
In.
I thought it was laughable this weekend, and I hope my daughter's not listening, but if she were in school, she'd be listening. If she weren't in school, she'd be listening. Her boyfriend's brother wanted to know if I was going to vote for Todd Helton because he thinks he deserves to be in, and that was his childhood hero. And I laughed. And then I hear Russ Ortiz, one of the guys I respect the most, and now I feel like an idiot for laughing at Todd Helton. But just based off this crew, before I listened to Russ, Todd Helton's at 33%.
I voted for Helton too.
Oh, 66%. So he's not getting in. Like if he were just on this panel. And then Andrew Jones, I voted for him. I think, Jeff Kent would get. Did you vote for Jeff Kent, Manny?
No.
So Jeff Kent, who I think belongs in the Hall of Fame, who Russ Ortiz thinks belongs in would only get 66% here. Joe Nathan would get 33%. David Ortiz, did you all agree on David Ortiz?
I did.
Yeah.
So David Ortiz probably gets in on the first ballot with this one because I'm leaning towards him. And then Pettit would get 33%. Scott Rowland, who I think I'm leaning towards voting for, you shake your head. Russ did not include him in his ballot, so he'd get 33%.
Mm-hmm.
Curt Schilling, no. Gary Sheffield, I've not voted in the past. I might vote for him this year. Not voted always in the past. I think I may have voted for him last year. I don't remember. Sammy Sosa, I voted for him last year. Manny, you were a no on Sammy.
As a
Russ,
Dominican, I am ashamed of his pink face. I cannot vote for him. I'm sorry.
Oh, my Lord. Russ, did you say yes or no? So you're a no on Sammy. So Sammy gets 33%. Billy Wagner gets in. You said yes on Billy Wagner, right, Russ?
I say yes on Wagner too.
So Wagner gets in. So you know what I'm saying? It's so difficult just with 3 guys. Now you add 30, and they all saw different players. So this was a great episode of Digging Deep in our T-Squared podcast, part of the Our Esquina podcast network, with former Major League All-Star Russ Ortiz and sports writer Jesus Ortiz. And our special guest today was Our Esquina podcast director Manuel Gomez, our East Coast bureau chief, and first-year BBWA member. Thank you, guys. Any parting thoughts? 30 seconds parting thoughts?
I do have a parting thought. With my omitting. Okay, so my Todd Helton thing, real quick. I'm for Todd Helton. I don't think players should be held against playing in Colorado. My co-host on Bodega Baseball had to pick a drop there real quick. Luis made a good point. How many players did what he did in Colorado? I mean, we know Larry Walker. We know Todd Helton. Arenado was a beast for a while. Trevor Story for a while. I just can't hold, if we're gonna act like, and I agree, yes, it is easier to hit in Colorado than it is anywhere else. You just have to look at the splits. But if it's that big of a difference, then shouldn't there have been more players coming out of Colorado that were just complete animals in terms offensively? And that's just not the case. I feel like there's only been a handful. So I can't hold it against him. He also has, I think, a top 3 OPS of all the guys on this list. I don't hold Colorado against players, guys. It's just not fair.
Yeah, that's why I leaned towards a yes, because I was like, yes, it's easier to hit there, but I had to face him, so I know how good he was. Incredible. I mean, so hard to face. My thing is, I would, not, you might be the only two writers that ever hear this, but I would say, to the writers, I'm just like, I really do hope that the writers understand how hard it is to hit a baseball, to field a baseball, to do the things that everyday players do, and how hard it is to get major league hitters out, and to do it for a long time. I really hope that the writers do understand that fully and never discount any of that, because when players have Hall of Fame stats that are, you think about a good player, a really good player, compared to a great player, not that you discount, not that you just push aside any like real issues with their character or performing enhanced stuff, but I just hope that all the writers look at the players and the stats and what they did and say, man, that holds a lot of weight for me, because like I said, just based off of actual quotes that I've read and heard, I'm not getting that enough from, I'm not hearing enough of that. I'm hearing more about how they just look at the person, so I would just say, I just hope that the writers really understand how difficult it is to play this game at a level worthy of the Hall of, potentially being a Hall of Famer.
Well, thank you very much. I can vouch for our writers, and I tell you, 99.999% do. Like every group, we don't all agree, and the fact that there's, with the character clause, everybody institutes it based on their parameters, so we all view it differently. But thank you very much, guys. I can't wait to sit down and hash out my ballot. And but for right now, I could tell you that Billy Wagner's getting in. He's getting my vote. I shouldn't say he's getting in because I don't know, but he'll get my vote again.
Can you say who you think? I mean, it's not telling people who you're voting for, but is there any way that you're just like, I think these 3 guys will get in, just based off of your experience over the years of?
I think David Ortiz gets in. I think David Ortiz is the only one who gets in this year. I think Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens deserve to get in. This is their last chance.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, so you think David Ortiz is probably the only one that will?
I think the only one who gets in this year is David Ortiz. I think Billy Wagner has a huge chance to make up a lot of ground this year and thread into it, but I just don't. If you look at the numbers from last year, I think an early. Let me go back to that. So Curt Schilling was at 71.1%, and he's already losing votes. So I don't see him gaining the votes that he's going to need to overcome. Barry Bonds is at 61.8 and Roger Clemens are at 61.6. I just don't see them gaining those. It's sad because I voted for them almost every year. Barry Bonds, I didn't vote for him 1 year. So Scott Rowland 52.9 could make a huge jump. Billy Wagner 46.4 can make a huge jump. Todd Helton can make a huge jump. But I just don't see the votes there for Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds to overcome the group that is steadfast against voting for them. I don't see a significant change of heart there. And I think it's sad.
Do you think it's realistic that nobody gets in this year?
I think it's a I would not be surprised if for the second year in a row nobody gets in.
No.
But I tell you what, there's a veterans committee. Minnie Minoso is probably getting in on the veterans committee.
About time, yeah.
There are other guys, but yeah.
So I don't know if you guys follow this guy, but Ryan Thibodeau, he tracks the Hall of Fame votes, and there haven't been many public yet, but as it stands right now, of the 5 public votes, I think all of the votes that have come in so far have been public, if I'm not mistaken. Todd Helton is the leader. Nobody else is. As of right now, but there's still a long way to go.
What's Todd Helton at?
80%.
80%. That's a huge. Who else? Like, what are the percentages there?
So again, the totals are very low right now. But Todd Helton has the most votes. Then after that comes Curt Schilling has 60%, Scott Rowland has 60%, Andrew Jones has 60%, and Roger Clemens has 60%.
Where's Billy Wagner at?
0. But like I said, I think the only votes we've gotten from are 1, 2, 3. Only 5 people have voted. So like this is very premature.
Yeah. It's early. Yeah, exactly. Well, it'll be interesting because I tell you what, before this conversation, I wasn't thinking of Todd Helton. After this conversation, I'd say that I'm probably more in line to voting for Todd Helton. I'll have to give him a serious consideration, and my daughter would tell you that 3 days ago I wasn't considering him at all.
Or you could do it as a tactic to scare your daughter's boyfriend away. Like,
no, it's not her. It's his brother.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll vote for him if you go away.
Yeah, no. There you go. That is against the rules, by the way. All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Have a great day. You've listened to Digging Deep in our T-Squared podcast with former Major League All-Star Russ Ortiz, sports writer Jesus Ortiz, and our special guest, Manny Gomez. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.